YouTube, Mr. Gibson Guy. Thanks for dropping by the channel. As you see, we are out in the garage studio today, so it must not be a photography video. No, it's not. This is a motorcycle video. And I'm wondering how many people have heard about this. There's not been too much said about it on the internet, but it happened, came out like this news a week ago, and I want to kind of share it with everybody who watches my videos. And that is the news that Harley Davidson sold everything about the Sportster to a Chinese company named Shineray. I'd never heard of them. Apparently it's a company that makes motorcycles, among other things, and I'll tell you all about it. But this is the big news that the air-cooled original 883 Sportster and 1200 Sportster have been out of the market for a couple of years now, but they are still in existence, but we're not going to see them here, likely. But let's take a look at what we know about this, because you might get angry, you might say, oh boy, Harley's lost me here. I haven't heard anybody approaching this positively. I've had my Sportster for 12 years, and it's not going anywhere. I wasn't planning on buying a new one. Anyway, I bought the older one because I like the older one better, but that's for a different video. Let's see what's happening here. The deal was Harley Davidson sold everything Sportster. All the blueprints, the tooling, the intellectual property rights, all this, the copyrights and everything, to a manufacturer in China. And they, well, I'll get that as we go through here. So they took away the tooling that was used to make the Sportster Evolution engine and sold that to the Chinese. Everything got shipped to China or maybe Italy. Kind of hearing conflicting opinions upon this. The bike is called Stormbreaker, and apparently it has been out probably in China for the last couple of years, since the Sportster disappeared from the lineup of Harley Davidson. And they initially made a 400 and a 500, basically the same exact bike, but with smaller displacement cylinders. And now they've moved up to the 883 and the 1200 to sell internationally. It's sold in Europe and the Middle East and everywhere, into Asia, in a company that's called SWM, which is one of the divisions of Shineray out of China. This is for European consumption, and the 883 and 1200 initially are supposed to be made in Italy. So we're not sure where the tooling was sent to, or if they had two sets of them or what. But supposedly they were making the smaller ones in China several years ago. Now they're releasing the full-size Sportsters and say they're made in Italy. The compression ratio goes from 10 to 1 down to 9 to 1, or maybe a little lower. And they have some squirters in the crankcase to spray cooled oil on the bottom of the pistons from underneath. And that gets it to pass Euro 5. And apparently that was the whole idea, was Harley needed to make Sportster riders by one of the new Revolution Max Sportsters, because this wouldn't pass Euro 5 regulations. Well, we don't have to pass Euro 5 regulations in the US. because we're not part of that stupid organization. And most Europeans are getting pretty tired of it too. The unelected government that runs everything. And maybe the Europeans will get some guts to do like England and throw the European Union out and go back to being their own country and selling what the hell they want to sell, instead of whatever some bureaucrats in Brussels tells them they're supposed to. But I hope I didn't reveal anything there. But that was the story, was that the Sportster wasn't going to pass Euro 5, so we had to drop it everywhere. I remember when Harley went to, never, that doesn't matter, that's a side story. I'll tell you what I think about the whole thing is that really Harley Davidson is using the Euro 5 as an excuse just to axe the Sportster. Why do they want to axe the Sportster? It's been almost 70 years in the catalog, and it's never let the company down. The company survived many times because it had the Sportster, and they just want to disrespect it so much they want it gone. We'll sell it to China, which I think was a very stupid move. Although I do understand what their thinking was, although their thinking has to change, and that was that they were looking at what they thought was coming, which was after the Biden administration, the Harris administration, or the Hillary Clinton administration, or the Gavin Newsom administration, another Democrat president, and they thought they were going to be taking over the House and the Senate, and we were going to be well down the path to socialism, with the government telling us what motorcycles we could ride, what we can't ride, what we can't buy, what we can't sell, and every little nook and cranny of how they worm their way into everything and ruin it. And so, just like with the automakers, the corporate people saw all this coming. But then last year there was an election, and everything they were counting on lost. The American people washed their hands of it and threw the bums out. And they said, no more of this crap. No more. It's not happening here. Just like England did with throwing themselves out of the Euro 5. We said, no, the deep state is not going to control us. We're going to do our own thing. And so, while Harley Davidson was scared to death that they had to get everybody switched over to their plastic and cardboard Revolution Max line and change, well, yeah, it's one of my big ideas here is, my guess is that this ugly, nasty, disgusting Nightster S and Sportster S and all the Revolution Max, all their off-road, on-road adventure bikes. What an adventure that would be. Oh, piece of crap. All these bikes have two things that they can't face with the Sportster. One is that the Sportster, with its Evolution engine, is probably kind of a labor-intensive, skilled product to make, to assemble that engine and everything that goes to it. Whereas the designs for the Revolution Max engines, I think you'll find are mostly put together by robots. And they can work 24 hours a day and you never have to pay them. So Harley Davidson can make a huge cutback in manufacturing staff, because they don't have to have so many workers to make these fine motorcycles. They're giving us garbage motorcycles that are put together by machines, and part two, that will not hold up like a Sportster or a Big Twin. The XLs and the FLs are more expensive to manufacture, but they are beautifully made, especially the ones that still have the Evo engine in it, the Sportsters. They kept, even though the FLs keep going after another engine, another engine, another engine, and I don't know, what are we on now? But anyway, they come up with those separate engine and transmission things that they've been making since the turn of the last century, or just shortly after that. But Harley Davidson needed to sell motorcycles that were cheaper to make and that would not go 100,000 or 200,000 miles like the real Harley Davidsons do. They need to get you back in the showroom. You know, I'm riding around on a 23-year-old motorcycle, and everybody still thinks it's new when they see it. It's not. It's 23 years old. I could have gotten one that was even older. And they hold up, even the paintwork on them is great, the engine is great, never gives you trouble, never gives you a problem, always starts. When I got it, it had been modified, so I had it modified back to original spec. And once I did that, I've never had a problem with it ever since. It cost a lot, but it was worth it to have one of these original Sportsters here. So that's what Harley's two goals are in doing this. Think about this, why they do this. See if you remember any of these names. The V-Rod, anybody remember that? How about the Street 500, Street 750? Or my favorite, how about the Live Wire? Remember those names? All of those were motorcycles that Harley Davidson was telling us we wanted. Meanwhile, everybody kept buying FLs and XLs until the cows come home. And nobody bought the garbage that Harley Davidson told us that we wanted, because we didn't want. What we wanted was what we had, and they should have just stuck with it. But we could still buy FLs, and we could still buy XLs from Sportsters and Big Twins from Harley Davidson. So Harley said, well, we're going to come out with some other new bikes, and we just have to make sure that the riders can't buy anything but what we tell them to buy, because we're totalitarians, we're the deep state. And so we get the Nightster and the Sportster S and the whole Revolution Max line, and the, I don't know, what do they call it, the Panamera or something. I get it mixed up with a Honda or a Suzuki or something, or a Yamaha. It's like, oh, let's see if we can make a crummy Yamaha that goes like shit, and it falls over and you can never pick it up again. They don't think about this. I don't know what bus drivers they have in charge of design in Harley Davidson. People that were smart enough to leave it alone for a century and then try to mess things up. But that's what my assessment is of the whole thing. They could have very easily said, screw Euro 5, because Harley Davidson was one of the biggest full-size manufacturer of motorcycles in the world. And they really had a big corner on the market not too long ago. And they were the Honda of the 21st century for a long time. And you know, the Euro 5 thing would only stand as long as Harley and as long as the American market went along with it. But without the FDA, not the FDA, I'm sorry, the EPA, you gotta remember all these four-letter words, without the EPA and their stupid restrictions on emissions from a motorcycle, then Euro 5 would be in the waste bin long ago, because your BMW and Ducati and all these companies, they've known what's coming. They've seen what's on the way, and they're looking to the U.S., and the U.S. wasn't given leadership. But we're given leadership now. Now, and I don't know if you know this for motorcycle folks, but if you follow more of the political realm, a couple of years ago, there was a Supreme Court case that was called the Chevron deference, and in that case, the Supreme Court decided with a 6-3 decision, I believe it was, it might have been 7-2, I think 6-3, with this 6-3 decision that government three-letter agencies could not write laws. That means that in the case of the EPA, whether it was in the Fed or the EPA or the, whatever it is, anything you want, the FBI, they could write policies, but they could only give anything the force of law, saying Americans must follow this or they're in violation of law, if it was a law which was written, passed by both houses of Congress, sent to the president and signed. And for the longest time, most of the last 10, 15 years, we've been living in an administrative state. And what we're talking about with the loss of the Sportster is exactly the picture of what that means. The government, or an agency of the government, which does not have legislative law-writing powers, was writing the laws, telling car companies and motorcycle companies what their emissions had to be, what their fuel mileage had to be, what, just you name it, anything stupid. They were just making it up, and the manufacturers were all going along with it. They shouldn't. Harley got in big trouble in the early 1980s, and they went to Ronald Reagan, and he fixed it up. So Harley had a renaissance and got to their grandest glory of all time after that, because they asked, because they were from US, and they said, we need this, we need some protection. And that's what President Trump is doing now, protecting all of our industries, which we've been losing all of to other countries. They've been stealing them away, and now he's bringing them back here, and he's not going to let bureaucrats at the EPA shut down the American motorcycle industry. He's not going to do that. He's not one of them. And this was completely in keeping with the Chevron deference case in the Supreme Court. And they said, no, EPA can't do that. They can do it if the Congress writes it in a bill, they pass it, and they send it to the president, and the president signs it, then they can make that part of the law. But only if it's constitutionally become a law. Because everything that the EPA and all these other groups were doing was just selling out to the highest bidder. All the what do you call it, lobbyists, all in Washington, that were throwing out the money to these rich politicians that make $250,000 a year in a paycheck, and they go off to Washington for 10 or 12 years, and they come back with $50 million from that $250,000 each year with expenses. Yeah. Right. Anyway, so I have to thank some of my fellow YouTubers that I first found out this information. One is Salty Old Biker, and the other is Uncle Tony's Garage. And they both shoot in their garage too, like this, like I do my bike videos. And they first brought this to our attention, but I looked and there's just a couple hundred views on their videos. It's like, let's let more people know about this. There's got to be more people who know about the Sportster. Uncle Tony says he wants to go to Italy and buy another Sportster because he can get a brand new one. I don't know, it would be kind of fun to pull up to the Harley dealer here. Oh, what is it called? Did I tell you? The title of the replacement for the Sportster, which is a Sportster, is called the Stormbreaker. The Stormbreaker. That's the replacement for the Harley Davidson Sportster. These are troubling times, my friend. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found this information useful and you learned something from it. And spread it around, tell your friends. Share my video. That's how we get known, is let people see it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.